mystery that is not unconnected to the genetic mystery. It's been known by archaeologists for quite a long time that there are anomalous...
For centuries, the story of the Aztecs was written in myths and legends, a people who appeared late in Mexico's history, powerful but mysterious. Historians pieced together fragments from ruins and Spanish accounts, but one piece of the puzzle remained hidden: their true origins, until now. New DNA research has opened a window no one expected. Scientists have discovered genetic links that stretch across continents, hinting at migration patterns we never got to know about. So what did scientists find? And how it changes our understanding of this past civilization? To understand this, let's go back to the beginning. The story we were told. For a long time, the story of the Aztecs seemed simple. According to mainstream history, the peoples of the Americas followed one clear path. Nearly 15,000 years ago, small groups of people crossed a frozen land bridge from Asia into North America. From there, they slowly moved south. Over thousands of years, these groups adapted to new climates and landscapes. Hunters became farmers. Camps became villages. Villages eventually became cities. Within this model, everything followed a straight line. No sudden leaps, no missing chapters, just gradual progress over time. That's where the Aztecs entered the story. They appeared late, very late. The Mexica people founded Tenochtitlan in 1325 AD on a swampy island in Lake Texcoco. Compared to older civilizations like Egypt, Mesopotamia, or the Maya, they seemed like newcomers. And yet, almost immediately, they were building something extraordinary. In less than 200 years, the Aztecs created a massive capital city larger than most European cities of the time. They engineered causeways, aqueducts, and floating agricultural systems. They tracked the movements of the sun and stars with precision. They developed complex calendars, a state religion, law codes, and an empire that dominated central Mexico. Historians explained this speed with inheritance. The Aztecs, they said, stood on the shoulders of giants. They borrowed knowledge from earlier cultures, including the Olmecs, the Maya, and the Toltecs. What seemed like a sudden rise was really centuries of shared ideas slowly passed from one generation to the next. It was a reasonable explanation, but it never fully explained the whole story. Something else puzzled scholars as well: the sheer organization of Aztec society. Cities were planned with precision, marketplaces operated like clockwork, and specialized craftsmen, priests, and scribes maintained complex systems. The level of coordination required didn't seem to come from nowhere. It hinted at layers of influence and knowledge long forgotten. And then there was the question of scale. The empire expanded rapidly, yet it maintained cohesion. Laws, tribute, and communication stretched across hundreds of kilometers, linking diverse peoples and regions. Historians struggled to explain how such centralized power could emerge so quickly in a society supposedly just arriving on the scene. How did so much complexity appear so fast? Why did their rise feel like a leap instead of a slow climb? The official answer was that it was all due to diffusion, adaptation, and time. People didn't question it. For decades, it went unchallenged, until scientists began looking at the DNA, and that's when the story started to change. The Australasian signal. When scientists began studying the DNA of ancient people in the Americas, they expected the story to be simple. For decades, the main idea was clear. The first humans crossed into the continent from Siberia, walked through Alaska, and slowly spread south. One path, one movement, one origin. But in 2015, that idea broke. A team analyzing DNA from indigenous groups in the Amazon found something no one had ever predicted: a small but clear genetic trace that matched people from the other side of the world. The closest match wasn't Siberia, it wasn't East Asia, it was Aboriginal Australians and Melanesians. At first, every researcher assumed it had to be a mistake. Maybe contamination, maybe a bad sample, anything but what the data was showing. But more tests kept confirming the same thing. The signal was real, and it was old, more than 15,000 years old, long before the Aztecs, long before any known city in Mesoamerica. This was not a small detail. It meant that at least one ancient group reached the Americas in a way no one had ever considered. A group that carried a lineage that somehow ended up deep in the Amazon rainforest, and the mystery only grew. The signal did not appear everywhere. It wasn't spread across the whole continent like other lineages. It survived in some regions, but vanished completely in others, as if whole populations carrying it had once lived across the land and then disappeared over time. What makes this more important for our story is that the Aztecs were not living on an untouched continent. They arrived in a land shaped by layer after layer of older movements, some local, some distant, and some so ancient that even the people who carried the genes no longer knew where their ancestors came from. As more DNA from ancient Mesoamerican remains is compared with these early signals, scientists are starting to notice faint overlaps, not strong enough to claim direct ties, but strong enough to show that the continent's past was never simple. And when the search moved into Mesoamerica, the evidence pointed to one truth. This place had been a mixing ground for people long before the Aztecs ever showed up. The genetic crossroads. Long before the Aztecs built Tenochtitlan, Mesoamerica was already a hub of movement, trade, and human connections. The land wasn't just a home for one group. It was a crossroads where generations of people met, mixed, and migrated. And now DNA is proving it in ways historians never imagined. Recent studies of mitochondrial DNA passed down through mothers show that Mesoamerica wasn't just a recipient of people. It was a dispersal point. Lineages from pre-Aztec civilizations, like the Teotihuacanos, appear in populations far to the north and south. Ancient Maya DNA is found all the way in Chile and Argentina. This means Mesoamerica didn't just receive waves of migration. It shaped populations across the hemisphere. The Aztecs arrived late in this story, around 1325 AD, but they inherited this complex, mixed genetic landscape. Their empire expanded over regions already shaped by centuries of population movement. Conquests didn't just redraw borders, they reshaped the DNA of the people they ruled. Studies of ancient city-states like Xaltocan show that maternal lineages changed significantly after Aztec expansion. Families were displaced, and local gene pools were replaced or blended with those of the Aztecs. This genetic mixing also reveals the power of Mesoamerican cities. They were not just political or cultural centers, they were living laboratories of human connection. People, ideas, and genes flowed across valleys, lakes, and trade routes. The Aztecs' rise was possible because they stepped into a region already rich in history, culture, and human diversity. Even more startling, certain paternal lines, the Y chromosomes, of earlier Mesoamerican civilizations largely disappear. Olmec, Maya, and Teotihuacan male lineages are almost gone in modern populations. This hints at major upheavals, population bottlenecks, or violent replacements that preceded the Aztec Empire. The continent wasn't static, it was constantly remade, and the Aztecs became one of the last waves to leave their mark. By studying the movement and replacement of lineages, scientists can trace the empire's real impact. The Aztecs didn't just conquer lands, they became part of an ongoing story written in human DNA, connecting them to migrations that spanned continents and millennia. And as we start to piece together this tangled web, the Aztec story becomes even stranger. It's not only about who they were, but also about the civilizations they inherited, and the mysterious genetic echoes left behind by people long vanished. The language. When the Aztecs expanded their power, they didn't rely only on warriors or tribute. They carried something far more effective across the land, their words. Nahuatl became one of the strongest tools they used to pull distant regions into their world. It wasn't limited to the center of the empire. Early Spanish accounts describe how people across huge distances already understood and used Nahuatl when the Europeans first arrived. Traders spoke it. Messengers used it. Marketplaces from Texas to central Mexico echoed with it. Even some coastal groups and communities near California had learned parts of it, passed along through trade routes that stretched farther than most imagined. Nahuatl worked like a bridge. It moved ideas, stories, and traditions from one place to another, linking groups that had nothing else in common. And wherever the language traveled, people traveled with it. Families, merchants, soldiers, and craftsmen moving across valleys, mountains, and rivers. DNA now confirms what these old reports hinted at. Regions connected by Nahuatl trade paths show signs of mixing that match long-distance movement. Maternal lines blend in places where the Aztecs built strong trade networks. Male and female lineages appear in patterns that reveal travel, exchange, and integration, not isolation. This also matches how the Aztecs ruled. They didn't try to erase every culture they conquered. They absorbed them. By spreading their language, they made it easier to collect tribute, share rules, and bring new communities into their system. Some local lineages faded out over time, while others merged into the new social networks built around the empire. But the deeper researchers look, the stranger the picture becomes. Nahuatl words and symbols have been found carved on artifacts far away from the main Aztec cities, places where no direct Aztec armies ever marched. This suggests that the movement of people and ideas started long before the empire, carried by earlier travelers who helped lay the foundation for the world the Mexica inherited. These clues raise new questions about the civilizations that came before. How many groups spread their languages across the region before the Aztecs? How many communities vanished, leaving only faint traces in carvings and DNA? And how many lineages were quietly absorbed into larger societies without leaving a clear record? Because behind every shared word and every borrowed symbol lies a deeper pattern, one that becomes impossible to ignore once scientists track the DNA of the people who lived in these regions. A pattern that shows not only mixing, but sudden breaks, missing branches, and entire male lines that simply disappear from the story. The Vanishing Fathers. For centuries, the story of ancient Mesoamerica seemed straightforward. Cities rose, cities fell, new people took their place. But DNA tells a much darker, more complex story. Many male lines, the Y chromosomes that trace father-to-son ancestry, simply disappeared. Entire male family lines vanished from the record. Scientists studying ancient remains found sudden breaks in male lineages. The Olmecs, Teotihuacan, and early Maya all show the same pattern. Men who fathered generations were gone in just a short period. It wasn't a slow fade. It looked like rapid replacement, often at times of crisis. In Teotihuacan, right before the city's collapse, almost all male lines were replaced. The evidence points to violent conflict, social upheaval, or forced displacement, not just natural migration. Women's lines tell a different story. Maternal DNA persisted far more strongly than male lines. Women moved into new communities, were absorbed into surviving societies, and carried their family's genetic heritage forward. This created a striking contrast. Male lines disappear, while female lines continue. It suggests men were the primary targets during crises, while women became part of the new social order. Entire male histories, families, networks, and leadership structures vanished, leaving gaps no written record could fill. By the time the Mexica, later known as the Aztecs, arrived in the Valley of Mexico, they entered a landscape already shaped by these losses. Many local male lineages had thinned or vanished, while female lines from earlier civilizations remained. This meant the Mexica were not starting from scratch. Their own male ancestry was intact, strong, and ready to merge with the surviving maternal lines of the valley. DNA shows that as the Mexica expanded, they blended their male lines with the existing female lines around them. This created a population pattern that favored the newcomers, giving them both a social and biological advantage over the fractured communities they ruled. The disappearance of so many earlier male lines changed the world the Mexica inherited. It was no longer just about cities or armies. It was about the very people who remained. And in that broken and mixed landscape, the Mexica's strong, unbroken male ancestry set the stage for the power they would build. The Aztecs' advantage. The Aztecs weren't the first to settle in the Valley of Mexico. Cities had risen and fallen long before they arrived. Yet something remarkable happened when they came. DNA shows that they stepped into a world already fractured by wars, collapses, and vanished male lineages, and they turned it into an empire. Their late arrival gave them a strange edge. While earlier civilizations lost much of their paternal DNA to violence and upheaval, the Aztecs' male lines remained intact. This wasn't luck. It allowed them to establish dominance quickly, marrying surviving maternal lines, absorbing populations, and reshaping the genetic landscape of central Mexico. Every conquest left a mark, blending people, traditions, and genes into a growing empire. But the Aztecs' influence wasn't just local. Their conquests created ripple effects that stretched far across Mesoamerica. DNA from regions as far as Oaxaca, the Maya territories, and even northern Mexico shows traces of Aztec expansion. Genetics confirms what history books hint at. The empire wasn't merely political, it was biological. Populations were reorganized, blended, and moved, leaving a lasting imprint on the people themselves. Their linguistic impact matches this genetic reach. Nahuatl, the Aztec language, spread widely, acting as a common tongue across conquered regions. This wasn't just communication, it was culture, identity, and control embedded into daily life. The Aztecs knew how to integrate the conquered while maintaining their own traditions, creating cohesion in a world still haunted by previous collapses. Yet, while their dominance is impressive, the DNA also shows traces of what they inherited. The Australasian signals, maternal lines from earlier civilizations, and fragmented genetic remnants all flowed into the Aztec population. Their empire became a living mosaic of centuries of migrations, collapses, and survival. By analyzing these patterns, scientists can see how the Aztecs didn't just conquer, they completed a puzzle left behind by lost civilizations. They stepped into a world of missing histories and filled in the blanks, leaving a trail of culture, language, and genes that survive to this day. This complex genetic story leads to one shocking realization. The Aztecs were more than warriors and rulers. They were the inheritors of a hidden world, piecing together the legacy of civilizations that came before. And their story sets the stage for the most puzzling and mysterious question of all: the vanished Y chromosome lines of their predecessors, the lost fathers of Mesoamerica, and what those absences really mean. The fathers of Mesoamerica. For centuries, history whispered about the rise and fall of Mesoamerican civilizations. The Olmecs, the Maya, Teotihuacanos built cities, temples, and empires that vanished almost without a trace. But DNA has finally told a new story, one hidden in plain sight: the puzzling disappearance of entire male lineages. Ancient Y chromosome analysis reveals a dramatic truth. The dominant paternal lines of these civilizations simply vanished. It wasn't slow attrition. It coincided with societal collapses, conquests, and the rise of new powers. The Aztecs, arriving late, inherited a fractured genetic world, stepping into gaps left by centuries of upheaval. This genetic vacuum shaped the empire they built. But why did these male lines disappear? Was it war, disease, or something more deliberate? Researchers believe it was a mix: violent conquests, forced migrations, and social restructuring erased much of the genetic footprint of prior leaders. The women's lineages survived more consistently, blending into the Aztec population, creating a genetic tapestry that carried fragments of vanished civilizations. These findings shift everything we thought we knew about Mesoamerican history. The Aztecs were not starting from scratch. They were inheriting a deeply complex world, both genetically and culturally. Their power was amplified by gaps left behind, allowing them to dominate with strategy, skill, and timing. Even more shocking, these gaps are not isolated. DNA hints that populations across the Americas were shaped by similar patterns: migrations, replacements, and lost lineages. The Aztecs were a pivotal point in a broader story, linking earlier civilizations, migrations, and even the mysterious Australasian genetic traces found in South America. By combining archaeology, linguistics, and genetics, scientists can now see Mesoamerica as a living network of people, cultures, and empires, rising, falling, and leaving traces that survived in surprising ways. The Aztecs, in particular, were both a product and a catalyst of this vast web of human movement. The final revelation is profound. History is not only written in ruins and codices, but it's also encoded in our very DNA. Each missing line, each vanished Y chromosome, tells a story of survival, conquest, and adaptation. The Aztecs didn't just build an empire, they bridged the past and future, connecting lost civilizations to the living world. And in that connection lies the true shock. The Americas' history is far more tangled, mysterious, and extraordinary than anyone ever imagined. The story of the Aztecs and the civilizations that came before them rests quietly in the past. The DNA has spoken, and the artifacts have been studied. It showed us not just empires and ruins, but the human lives, migrations, and struggles behind them. The Aztecs were more than conquerors. They were inheritors of a vanished world. So what do you think? Should we dig deeper into these lost civilizations? Or should some secrets just remain buried? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe. Also, turn on the notifications bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into history's hidden truths. Until then, see ya.